Have you found yourself wondering, is there something more? If so, then you, my friend, are a dreamer in waiting. I'd like to welcome you to the Dream On podcast. I'm Julia Gentry, and along with my husband, Travis Gentry, we discuss real, raw, and not small talk conversations about faith, family, entrepreneurship, and all the things that matter most in this life in order to help people bridge the gap between what they currently have and what they really want most. Join us as we give you insights, tools, and strategy to chase every dream that's on the inside of you, but be forewarned. This podcast is not for the faint of heart, but rather those of heart. This is the Dream On podcast.
Welcome to another Dream On podcast. I am so excited to be in our garage in Orlando, Florida with one of the all-time best games behind us. If you are watching, this is like one of the original games that I used to play.
It's Mario.
Can't go wrong with Mario.
I mean, you can't. Which is so funny that it took us so long to do a podcast in this room. Because it's so fun.
Well, it's so hot too.
It's hot.
So we're going to probably be sweating here in about 10 minutes. But we figured we'd do a podcast. And today, I'm excited about this podcast as well because I feel like we talk about this all the time, me and you. Mm-hmm. And we've seen it in our own lives and we've seen it in other people's lives. Mm-hmm. So what are we talking about today?
Today we are talking about the fact that how-tos are not enough.
They're not enough.
And it's so funny that you even prompted this conversation because even in my book, I say we live in a time where we can Google anything, like at our fingertips. Mm-hmm. We can Google how to make more money, how to lose more weight, how to have more passion in a marriage, and we can have pages upon pages upon pages of legit answers. And still, statistically speaking, right, depression is at an all-time high, divorce is at an all-time high, right? Like we're seeing the realities in people's lives that aren't in alignment with the fact that we have so much information at our fingertips, and yet the results in our lives aren't measuring up. Mm-hmm. So it's like we're Googling more, but we know less. You know what I'm saying?
And our results there's almost analysis paralysis because there's so many choices. And we've ran across that too in our own life where it's like, when you have, for me, it's like picking out something when I'm doing a flip. Mm-hmm. And there's, 100 different choices of light fixtures. Mm-hmm. It's like so overwhelming. You're like, at the end of the day, who cares? But I want it to be right, whatever right is, but there's no right. And so same thing with like how-tos. Yeah. So whatever you want to be, if you want to be fit, if you want to be wealthy, mm-hmm. financially secure, if you want to have a great relationships, like someone has done a podcast, written a book on it, and you can read it and learn from them, but it's not enough.
Oh, okay. So let's just dive in. Well, why though? Why is it not enough? Because I think even to your point, right, there can be so much information out there that we just are paralyzed mm-hmm. with where to start, even though there's step 1, you do this, step 2, you do that, step 3, you do this, and still we have a hard time getting to step 1, mm-hmm. right? But then I'm really curious and want to talk through, right? Like, okay, so yours is too many options. And mine is that, like, how is it that we could even be given the steps, a 1, 2, 3 step guide, and still
sabotage it? Like, literally, we sabotage whatever we want. And it all comes back to, and there's a great book out right now. It's called Our Dream, I Dare You.
I brought it with us
in case you wanted to see the visual. But this is part of the whole book and the premise of why you wrote the book and everything that we've been talking about for years and years. Yeah. A lot of the principles and the foundation and the things that we have worked through and continue to compound on is in that book. Yeah. Because you can read how to, like you said, and this is an example that we've seen time and time again. I've seen it over the last decade, which is crazy to say.
You're getting old now. You know that when you can say that.
But I've been doing real estate investing for a decade now. And when we went to our first class in 2007. And there's a few people that we're still connected to on Facebook.
Yep.
And you can see like the people that do and move forward with real estate investing, whether it's flipping, wholesaling, rentals, whatever it may be, you spend thousands, tens of thousands of dollars to learn how to.
Yep.
And a very small percentage ever do one deal, let alone do and stay in the business for a long time.
Totally. Well, I'm even coaching a real estate group right now, a very big national company. And they even statistically prove, which I think we've heard it in the investor world too, but 20% of their agents do 80% of the revenue, right? 20% do 80% of the revenue. And the others just, it's ish, it's an ish percentage. And so I think that for me, it's why, right? Like, why is it that we continue to ask so many of the same questions when the answers are right in front of us? The answers are oftentimes, it's not that God isn't speaking to us. It's that we aren't positioning ourselves to hear. And then once we do hear, why is it that we just aren't doing anything with what we heard?
Yes. And as you're saying that, and we'll talk about that more too, what comes to mind for me is, why do we allow our past to dictate our future? The story that we have of what did happen or what I experienced, and it's, the self-imposed limitations that we put on ourselves through our experiences and our interpretations, like how big of a stronghold that has on our daily, weekly lives that we consciously don't recognize unless you start to do the work.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so where do we go?
No, we can go in a few different directions, but that's why I got so excited, because this truly is whether it's fitness or finances or, relationship with God and having that, it's so easy to say, to have a relationship with God, there's certain things, read it, and biblically there's certain things, and some of it is to be still.
Yeah.
And that is
then you'll know. Yeah.
And then you'll know. And the hardest thing to do is to be still, because most often when you pray or have that time, you pray and then you get up and you're done.
Yeah.
As opposed to praying and sitting there and allowing that silence to come in.
Yep. Well, it's so funny because it says in Hebrews, I'm just going to read a couple of scriptures because I think this gives some insight as to what we're talking about. So end of Hebrews 3, it says, "It is clear that they could not enter into their inheritance because they wrapped their hearts in unbelief." Then it goes on in chapter 4. It says, "What they heard didn't affect them deeply because they doubted. For those of us who believe, faith activates the promise." It says we must give our all and be eager to experience this faith rest life so that no one falls short by following the same pattern of doubt and unbelief. So it's I know, right? I can read the how-to. I can understand at a head level what I'm supposed to do, but then I don't let it impact me deeply enough that we talked about this in our last podcast, I let the doubt, right, the question, send me over into my fear zone or my bad habits, my patterns of doubt and unbelief. And then so I'm not activated into faith to pursue the promise, the dream, the vision, right? And so then I just keep creating the same thing.
Yeah. So which a lot of people stay in that mode of I'm confused, so I'm not accountable.
Yeah.
Because I don't know.
And that's, yeah.
I don't know, so you can't hold me accountable because I don't know, because I want to not know, because then once I know, then I'm responsible, or I should be responsible for the knowledge now that I do have.
So then if the how-tos are not enough, what's enough then? If we say the how-tos are not enough, because that's obvious. So if we are stating this whole concept around the how-tos are not enough, then what is enough? What do I need to change so that when I read the how-tos, that they work, right? Like this is the whole concept that motivation and accountability should not be built in the world around you, right? Like I think that that's why the motivational industry is a $9 to $11 billion industry a year, because I believe that we as people think that our motivation and accountability and inspiration should happen based upon the things that are happening around us. Like I'm going to pay you to motivate me, and it works for a day or a weekend, amazing seminar, I come all jazzed, but given 30 days, it quote unquote doesn't work anymore. Not because it didn't work, but because I don't work, right? Like I lit a fire around me, but I forgot that the fire starts within me.
Yep. And it's also chasing the wrong thing, because there's so many how-tos out there. You start to go down this path. You can go down this path of, I want that because of what they have, because you think that will bring you some kind of emotion or feeling.
Yep.
And so you go down that and saying, if I just had that, then I would be happy.
Yep.
Well, you may get that.
Yeah. Follow all the steps. You do
follow all the steps.
Yeah.
And then you realize that that's not what you were going after, because it's not that. It's the feeling that you think you're going to get from whatever it is.
Yeah.
So it's understanding. Like the foundation is understanding who you are. Why are you here? And what are you going to do about it? Right. Living out your purpose. And it's not, you've got to be careful of looking at the world around of what you should want.
Right.
And you start to compare and, status wise or finances or working out. Like if I'm going to go and I want to be a bodybuilder, I'm not going to go run triathlons.
Yeah.
But we get confused because there's so many different ways to work out and stay healthy, but you've got to understand, why are you staying healthy?
Yeah.
And then go after what makes sense for you.
Yeah.
Is it yoga? Is it running? Is it working out with weights? Is it jiu-jitsu? What is it for you? And then go to how-tos are good, but if you don't have the foundation first,
in and of themselves, they're not enough.
They're not enough. Yeah. Because I've done that. It's shown up in my own life.
Yeah.
We've started something thinking, oh, if we get that, or we could crush it in this and make a lot of money. And then we start going down that path and we're like, this eats my soul.
Yeah.
Like this is like the worst business for who I am.
Totally. Okay, so then if we were to pull that all back, then what is enough, right? Like where do you start? If the how-tos are just a tool, right? Like it's icing on the cake, right? Because wherever we go, there we are. We know that. Wherever you go, there you are. And so where do you start? If the how-tos just get to be something that amplifies the revelation, a coach, right, or a weekend retreat or a seminar, right, gets to be the icing on the cake.
Yeah. Right?
What's the cake? Like, what is enough? Where do you start?
Within.
How do you do that?
And that's like the hardest.
Totally.
Is to start within, to understanding those desires, that voice that won't go away.
Yeah.
That is what you need to listen to, not the world around you.
Yep.
And identify what it is for you, but it's going within. So you can call it meditation, you can call it quiet time, you can, spending time with God, whatever, like however you do that. But most people, and we've been victim of this ourselves, of allowing like our days going through just the routine of the day, as opposed to planning out our day. Like our day unfolds and you look back and you're like, what did I do today? As opposed to saying, no, here is what I'm going to accomplish today and this week. And making sure that you get the things done that are important to you. Right. Because you took the time to slow down. And hear that voice.
Well, I mean, I think, did you have something else you wanted to add?
Yeah, I got more. This one really excites me. Because of the fact this is so within your book and the things that the Dream Factory and Co., all the things that we believe in, and it's layer by layer and understanding, like this isn't something, you can't take a weekend workshop and everything. It's new practice, new habits, like all the things you've experienced, your interpretations, the truths that you've come to realize for yourself.
Yep.
And then once you start to realize that they're not my truths.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then you're like, what is my truth?
Mm-hmm.
And then you go into liminal states,
mm-hmm.
which we talked about on a different podcast.
Yep.
So it's like you're peeling back this, but all of it comes within.
Yeah, and I think that it's interesting because, we talk so much about understanding how to master your mind, because when you master your mind, right, that's where your dreams speak. That's the voice of God on the inside of us. And I think that we are so externally facing, right, to your point, where we are first part of our lives almost always feel like we're in safety, security, survival mode, like we're just trying to kind of like make ends meet, we're trying to make a living, we're trying to kind of build a life intermixed with all of that. And then all of a sudden we kind of start to hit certain levels of success, and then we're like, hey, what do you think about me? What do you think about my car? What do you have? Now we're YouTubing and Googling and seeing all the things that everybody has. And so I think we're constantly looking around at the world around us, forgetting about the world within us. Right. And so then when the world around us is now empty or isn't giving us what we want, or we either accomplish the how-tos or we don't accomplish the how-tos, or we get what we want or we don't get what we want, right? Like there's still that like dissatisfaction with it. And I think it's because we've lost our own voice. Mm-hmm. We're so connected to the things going on around us that we're so disconnected with the world that's going on within us. Mm-hmm. And part of mastering your mind is almost like mastering the silence. Right? Like truly being still.
Yeah.
And the Bible talks about that. Be still and know. It doesn't just say no. We all want to know the answer.
Yeah.
Like all of us have 1,000 questions that we could ask right now that would be lovely to know the exact answer. But the Bible says be still and know.
Yeah. And don't get it twisted of what we're saying either. Faith without works is dead.
Right.
Like you have to have action behind it. It's not just sitting there all day.
Oh, for sure.
It's hearing that voice inside, because we go through this process of life of this is what you have to do.
Right.
You have to go to school. Like that's what you have to do.
Right.
And then you go into this season of like, this is what you should do. Mm-hmm. And that's predicated on your environment or your parents or whatever. Like you should go to college because this is the next step.
Yeah.
This is what people do. Mm-hmm. And then you get out of college, whether you go to college or you don't, and then you're like, now what? Now what?
What's the next should?
Then I should get a job. Then I should get married, and then I should go through as opposed to like, no, what do I want? Where do I want to live?
Yeah.
Who do I want to be? What do I want to try? Mm-hmm. And we get lost in that and we start to lose ourselves. And that's why most often you have this midlife awakening of like, man, I've been doing and going down this path, and deep down in my core, this is not who I want to be.
Right. Right. But then I think part of this is, so what's happening is that I think that most of us get so stuck in the doing, right? Like I'll admit that's my bend is to do really fast. Like we've been talking about that even this last week, like a more hyperactive. I am a doer, and I think part of it is because I grew up in the Christian world and with a mom who was, very much connected to the be still moments. And so I would watch and honestly was like, great, while you're sitting still, I'm gonna go get shit done. I really think that that was my way to protect myself. It was my way to not be still. It was my way to protect. It was my way to like prove that I could accomplish, right? But I think that that's what's happening is then our doing like waxes and wanes, and we know like subconsciously, I think we all believe of like, this isn't really working, so I'll just work harder. I'll do more. I'll add more to my to-do list. Like I'll just keep adding. And so for me, it was like being still is oftentimes the harder of the things to do. Being still, and it's the recipe, I think, for better action to implement the how-tos more successfully, because now it's not just the how-to for the sake of the how-to, it's how-tos that are in alignment with who I am.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's not even just about the how-tos, to your point, like even if we're talking about fitness, right? There's a million ways to lose weight, there's a million ways to get muscle, there's a million ways to make $1 million, but I believe wholeheartedly that each one of us, there's a self-mastery around that, to where like how you would lose weight or get fit was going to look different than me because we have different body types and like our bodies respond different to different foods and right like and your way to be successful in business is going to look different maybe than my way because of my gifts and my skill sets and my talents. And so I feel like this is more about alignment and less about just a how-to.
Yeah.
Right? Because I've tried to fit myself into the box of how-tos and you still couldn't hear my voice. Right? I was just a copycat. It just looked like everybody else's in the industry because it should look like this.
Yeah.
And so I was developing skills around looking like everybody else, but I still wasn't hearing my own voice.
Yeah.
My song wasn't being sung, right? Like my flavor wasn't being injected. And I feel like that's oftentimes a trouble spot, is that we are so afraid of standing out because we learned so long to fit in that now we can't hear our own song.
Mm-hmm.
And then the how-tos aren't working as accurate as they could, or they're unfulfilling because I'm out of alignment.
Yeah.
I'm totally out of whack. It's not true to me.
Yeah. And it's not that it's wrong.
Correct.
Like the how-tos,
Totally.
you know, like certain things, it's right.
Yep.
And if you do that, you will be successful.
Yep.
Or you will lose weight.
Yep.
It's there again, just looking at making sure it's within alignment within who you are.
Totally. Well, and I think again that I feel like the short-sightedness in that tactic is, okay, good, I'm going to do this how-to so then I can be happy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to do this how-to because then I'll finally be successful. Mm-hmm. And that's why it like doesn't work, because we are putting all of our eggs in a basket that says, well, this makes me happy, this makes me successful, this makes me valuable. And then when that how-to shows up empty,
mm-hmm.
right? Because that's not the point of the how-to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then, I mean, there's so many different paths that we can go down this. I think we get like examples that people can relate to as well, like in business. So often like you start off and you're excited and you go into business and you have to do everything, mm-hmm. but then you start to lose the momentum because you have to do everything, mm-hmm. or you feel or you think you have to do everything, mm-hmm. where like I start to stifle and creativity when I'm in the weeds.
Yeah.
Like that's not my highest and best use of time.
Yeah.
So I need the right people around me that do that really well. Mm-hmm. And I'm more visionary and big picture and going and doing action wise, mm-hmm. as opposed to the systems and back end that I just need to, there again, get someone else to complement me. Mm-hmm. And that person also, if they try to do what I do, right. or how I do it, it stifles them. But together in business, you look at some of the most successful businesses and entrepreneurs, like they understand who they are within the business and their skills and talents and understanding. Like, I want to do this, and it could be real estate, you know, like whether you're great with numbers or you're not, or construction or people or contracts or whatever, like you have to, there's few people that can do everything and do it well.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love for you to name one.
But the most successful people are the ones that have a team, and they either are part owners or they're just part of their team.
And in your mind, what does that have to do with the how-tos? Wrap that around that.
Because when we start to go specifically being an entrepreneur, because we're in and around a lot of entrepreneurs. Yeah. So the how-tos, you can go read a book on how to be successful, or listen to a video, or take a workshop on real estate and how to be successful. Yeah. But the reason why how-tos are not enough to be successful in real estate is because understanding your skills, your talents, and your God-given abilities, and then surrounding yourself with and covering your weaknesses. Yeah. Because school teaches you need to do everything on your own for the most part. Mm-hmm. And so when you get out into the world, you think you have to do everything on your own. Mm-hmm. But understanding in entrepreneurial space, whether you're creating a widget or you're doing real estate or now as you're doing this book, even the podcast that we don't do all the other things. We do the podcast, we upload it to our team, they help us to edit it, put it on the platforms, like that's part of it. So understanding, covering your weaknesses on why the how-tos are not enough. Like at a head level, you can watch something and it makes perfect sense, but there's obviously peeling back the layers of why you wouldn't get started. You could have self-imposed limitations or I'm not worthy or whatever those may be, coupled with I have to do all these things and 60% of them or 50% of them or 70% of them, like I get it, but I won't do it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and I think it's interesting because I feel like if we're not careful, we want a how-to fulfill. I'll just speak for me. Often I just want a how-to to give me a shortcut. You know what I mean? Like just give me the shortest cut that I can have to success. And fair, I mean, I think we're all looking to be more efficient, and I appreciate efficiency, but I feel like, you know, and I had a client that said this of like, okay, I hear everything that you're talking about, even so going back to the example of being still and knowing, right? Like actually having quiet time or meditation or spending time with God and praying. And he said, well, yeah, but Julia, I'm just not quite as spiritual as you are. Like, what are the how-tos? And I was like, that's exactly the point, right? Like, that's exactly my point, is that there is no how-to to have quiet time or meditation time with God. And most of us then, we try to download an app or we try to do all the things. And what's happening is that now meditation and quiet time becomes one more thing that we check off of our to-do list, as opposed to letting it change who we are as a person, right? Like, to your point, I think that business and getting to the point that you have to hire and outsource and bring on a team, for me, the how-tos are out there. It's the process of me actually learning how to trust myself, learning how to trust other people, learning how to trust God, learning how to trust something that's bigger than me. So it's not just about the how-to, it's about me having to come face to face with the reality that I don't trust anybody.
Yeah, no, and that's a great,
you know what I'm saying?
Point.
Like,
yeah,
no, the reality
really
is it's not the how-to, because I could Google how to hire anyone,
Yep.
anything, no matter what the business is. Like, no one nowhere can say it can't be done or it's impossible. It's been done. I'm guaranteed it's already proven.
Yep.
The problem is that the reality within me says I can't trust anyone, and so therefore I'm the issue. My belief that I can't trust anyone is the issue. It's not the how-to. The how-to's fine. The how-to
100%. No, that's so funny. And that's spot on, because real estate specifically, you can look at it and say, okay, like I need an acquisitions, I need a dispositions, I need a VA, I need a bookkeeper, I need an attorney. But with some of those key roles, if you have that belief, I can tell you exactly, just do this and you'll be successful.
Yes. And someone looks at you and goes, okay, and then they go home
and don't do
it.
don't do nothing.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I think quiet time or stillness with God, right? Here's what it means. You get up in the morning and you sit quietly with the Bible. And people go, well, what am I supposed to do then? And what am I supposed to read? And then what happens? And then where do I go? And then what do I need? An app. Maybe I'll get an app. And then I'll start. And then you just start going through this chatter because we're scared, or it's the wrong way, or we're not going to do it the right way. And then the whole problem is, no, what you're having to confront is stillness. What you're having to confront is the addiction to busy and control. It's the fear of trusting a God who has always had your back, but now you're going to have to confront the lie that says he doesn't.
Totally.
You know what I'm saying?
And then, yes, within that, sitting there, being okay with imperfect action.
Totally.
And understanding there's that process that you go through. Like I can tell you, go pick up that 100-pound dumbbell. That's all you do. You just go over there, you walk up, you pick it up. That's what you do. But you can't, because you haven't gone through the process. And the process with the weight is you have to lift smaller weights and then gradually heavier to get to that point. Same thing with what we're talking about as an entrepreneur. Like you have to identify what do I need to go, who do I need to become to be able to manage and maintain whatever it is, to hire someone, to get out of my head, to get out of myself.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that's, if we're going to summarize how-tos are not enough, then what's enough? It's that you have to realize that the dream is not about the dream. It's about you. it's about you and who you become on the way to manifesting the dream, right? Like, we all want the dream, God wants you. You know what I'm saying? Like, we want the answer, God just wants you. We want the dream, the world just wants better people. That is the point. And so the how-tos, it's not about the how-tos. The how-tos aren't enough, because what we need are people that already know that they are enough. Because they've walked through it, right? I've learned to master the silence. I've learned to realize that meditation isn't for the sake of meditating. It's for what I learn in my quiet time with God. So when I go out into my world, I actually bring that tone with me. It's about learning that, oh crap, I have a problem trusting people. And so as I build this business, this is not just about building the business and hitting the quota and the agenda, which are all important. I'm not suggesting that like that's how we run a business. But the goal of this now is so that I become a person who knows how to trust again. Right? Like, the whole point of maybe losing weight or eating healthier, yeah, sure, is so that I have a better body or that I feel better. But it's also about me actualizing and being the best version of me.
Totally.
That's why I'm doing this. And so now I have to find something that isn't just like a sprint to the finish line, because that's not going to make me a better me. That's going to make me exhausted. Right? And then I'll give up after 90 days. I'll be like, thank God I'm done with that. And I'll just revert back. It's about, no, this is designed to make a better me.
Well, and go and shift into like what health. If you don't feel worthy, you're not going to lose weight. You're not going to do the things that need to be done, because the first step is move more and eat less.
Totally.
And can be the hardest step. Because what if it starts to work?
Totally.
Then all the things start to come up. So that mindful time, the quiet time of understanding who I am within the midst of this journey to lose weight and to be who I know I can be and I feel called to be. And I think that is the hardest part in all of our defenses, right? Because I think some of us start to think, well, then I'm the only one. And no, this just makes you human. Like, welcome to the club. My name is Julia and I'm human too. Totally.
I think part of this is that you start to open the cans of worms, and you just have to look at the things that normally you don't want to look at and that make you uncomfortable. And we start to see our weaknesses. To your point earlier, right? Like, we were taught early on, show no sign of weakness. And so, heaven forbid, I sit with myself and look at all my weaknesses. But that's the whole point, is to learn that, like, it's par for the course. And I love that you said, I mean, the whole idea is not for you or me to be good at all the things, because then I wouldn't need people. I wouldn't need God. Like, we wouldn't need as humanity to come together. And so I think part of it is that in our weakness, He is made strong. In my weakness, someone else has a job.
Totally.
All the things. Like, this is what makes the economy go round.
Well, it's not a selfish thing that we've talked about, I think, before. But like, if your dream just includes you, it's not a dream from God.
Totally.
Like, it's not truly. Maybe it's something you want to try or experience, but it's not truly the dream, because your dream should take more people. And people are waiting for you to step into whether you're a part of someone else's dream or someone's a part of your dream.
So I think overall, I think that the reason that the concept of like the how-tos are not enough is because it's not about that. It's not about just another how-to. It's not one more thing to check off the list. It's about, who do you become in the process? Who do I need to become, so that when I do manifest my dreams, when trouble does come, when obstacles do hit, when I get a no 1,000 times, like, who do I have to become? I mean, that's what this is all about. It's about becoming a better version of ourselves, and with everything that comes our way, good, bad, or indifferent. Like, it's all designed to make us and not break us if we look at it as that opportunity. But the how-tos in and of himself, I mean, historically now, proof is in the pudding. They're not enough. They're not enough. It's about the journey. It's about the process. It's about taking it and learning how to be still, how to master the silence, how to look at, I think, obstacles as opportunities and weaknesses as points of leverage.
And when you do try to force it, and we know people like this where they are successful financially, and they're miserable personally, because they're not willing to
Do the work.
Do the work.
For sure. I mean, name any of that. I mean, I think even in my own life, it's like, I feel like my life is flashing before my eyes in this conversation because I'm like, oh, that's why that's not working so well in that part of my life. Is not that the how-to in and of itself isn't working. It's that piece in me isn't working yet. It's just an opportunity for growth. And that mindset shift, instead of shaming, because I think I've lived there most of my life, I didn't want to open any of these cans of worms because of the level of shame that I felt.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's been a proactive 4 years of turning that shame into chance, right? Like a chance to be better, like that. I don't have to shame that anymore. It's a chance to grow. It's a chance to learn. It's a chance to be loved. It's a chance. I mean, I feel like you've shown me that more than anyone, which is, what if I didn't have to shame it and I could still just be loved because of it?
Yeah.
Like earth shattering.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's I mean, that's a whole, like the shame, the guilt, and as once you start to feel those emotions, like you start to pull back, you start to shut down, as opposed to there again, allowing yourself to feel that.
Yeah.
And in this world, and we've done it in different ways by drinking, that drinking, drugs, shopping, excessive anything allows you to disconnect and like, feel the void. Like it's hard to sit there. That's one of the hardest things to do is to sit there and be still and not think about like, what am I gonna, like fully, like, what am I gonna do? Like just allowing like thoughts to come in you and not trying to control the thoughts.
Totally.
Of like, okay, I got 5 minutes. I'm gonna set my timer. Let's do this. Okay, I'm done.
On to the next
and then
thing.
on to the next. It's like allowing you, knowing that voice inside of you is wanting to guide you that day and that week to live out your purpose. The things that bring you joy are the things that are put in you for a reason.
Totally.
And most often we avoid those.
Yeah. Well, and I think, the biggest thing that I've learned in this journey, and we heard this from Rick Warren, around his 6-week kind of patterns, right? Where we create new habits. It's, research has shown that every 6 weeks we can create a new habit, and it's a rather painful 6 weeks because you go from consciously incompetent to consciously competent to where you're like, oh, maybe this isn't so scary, isn't so bad. But he talked a lot about at their church, they do these 6-week cycles, right? To really push hard for something new. And so even for me, I notice as of late, I've just started to become more hyperactive and controlling. And I think it's because, once this book launched, you're like, oh crap, here we go. Everything I've ever wanted, it's all out there. Like, here we go, right? And I think that for me now, what I'm committed to doing, and I would encourage anyone who's like, I don't know how to be still. I don't know how to, that's just not who I am. I love to do, I'm busy. Like we create all of these, we push the bar further and further away for transformation to happen because we continue to go, well, that's not who I am. And I'm just busy and I always like something to do. Okay. I hear that. And for me, what I'm doing, and I would encourage anyone, is I'm doing a quiet hour every single day for the next 30 days, right? 30 days to where it's like just quiet space, no agenda, no bias, not trying to find an answer, right? Like not forcing it, but just sitting with it, sitting with the chatter in my mind without judgment, right? Like I still write my to-dos. If they come to me, I'd write them down, like no harm, no foul, write them down and get off of it. This morning I was led to scripture. The other morning I was led to just read a little bit of my book. Tomorrow maybe I'll do some yoga. But the point is, what got me to where I am isn't going to get me to where I want to be. And the how-tos, for some reason, in some areas of my life aren't working like they could. They're just not. And I have to own that. You've taught me that, right? Like I have to own that. And so my next 30 days is dedicated to, I want to pattern interrupt. I want to do this different. I want to master the silence. I want to master my mind. I want to hear God speak. I want to be clear about my dreams. I want to be unapologetic. And I want my life to have different fruit. So guess what? We do the hard things. We pick the hard that we want most, because I can continue to be hyperactive and psycho and controlling, fair. I know what that gives me. I'm not as interested anymore. I'm a little... We're
not getting the results that you want.
I'm disenchanted by it.
Yeah.
So I'm on a journey. Join me if you may, dreamers. 30 days.
Yeah.
30 days.
And what is that specifically like? So it's just in the morning?
Yep, in the morning, I'm going to get up an hour and it's just space. No agenda. I have my Bible, I have my journal, and I do have my to-do list because I write about this in the book. I think that there's layers to this kind of like meditative state. Mm-hmm. And so there's that chatter layer, which is just psycho, like I shouldn't be doing this and this is stupid and I don't have time for this and when will that and what about this and what about that? And I just sit with it for a while. It does stop. It really does because it runs out of things to say. Mm-hmm. Especially when I don't try to resist it or control it, it runs out of things to say. And then I actually think of like things that I forgot to book an airline ticket or order groceries or, oh man, I forgot to tell my bookkeeper to charge this like all the things. And so I just write it down. Yeah. Like it's coming like, oh shoot, like I forgot about it. So I write it down and I push it away and I write it down, push it away until that stops too. Sometimes it's 5 to do, sometimes it's 100, and then it's quiet.
Yeah.
And then I actually read, I'm absorbing what I'm reading, or I find peace, or I sit with the stillness, or I'm prompted, or a color crosses my mind, or an idea, or a person's face, or like a picture of something. And then the idea here is that I take that tone with me throughout the rest of my day. So when a moment comes and I feel that similar tone or I'm prompted to do something, it's because I'm taking that tone with me. Mm-hmm. I'm not asking it to solve my problems or answer every question. I'm asking it to make me a better person.
Instead of being reactive throughout the day.
Instead of being reactive, I'm almost in this tone of watchfulness and like openness and surrendered, and I'm still getting stuff done. I have my to-do list, but like I'm watchful. I'm watchful.
Yeah. And knowing it's not like perfect.
No.
And going and allowing that to be what it is though. Yeah. Like I think we want to control a lot of things in our life, especially when we feel out of control. We want to control something.
Yes. And
so then you go to certain things that you can have control over. Yep. And most often that's not the best thing to control.
I mean, I know nothing about what you're talking about.
Whether it's food, whether it's your kids, whether, like you just want to control something. Who's around me? What's the closest thing? What can I control?
Stop reading my diary right now. Yeah.
And so allowing that space, I think, we need new thoughts. Yeah. Because our thoughts led us to where we are today. Yeah. So you need to read something, or whether it's the Bible, or there's resources out there to help you at least have a new thought. Yeah. And sit with.
Totally.
To then unpack it for yourself.
And that's, I think, where the power is, right?
Not just reading. It's like someone that says, I read 10 books a month, and you're like, that's great. But most often, like, just because you read, it's not about how much, it's about.
And for me, I would encourage, and this space is not about gaining information. This is not about more information, because again, to our point, that the how-tos are out there. Mm-hmm. Read the information later, after you transform from the inside out. After all of a sudden you start to wake up to some awarenesses and you know why you do what you do, and you're like, oh man, I do control things in order to protect myself, or anger is my, like my go-to, or like, I'm addicted to whatever, like, oh, interesting. The reason why is this. Now I have new eyes. I have fresh eyes. And so for me in that moment, like I am not trying to like zone into more information. I'm creating the space to be open. Mm-hmm. I'm creating the space to hear. I'm creating the space to dream. Space.
But that in itself, I think is, and hopefully this helps people listening, that in itself is hard for people to even comprehend.
Oh, for sure.
Because they've been in this pattern of waking up, rolling over, like going through the day. So to be like, I'm going to wake up maybe a little bit earlier. I'm going to wake up at the same time, and I'm just going to like be. Yep. Like, what do you mean I'm just going to be? I'm just going to sit there. Yes. And then my mind's going to like lead me. Yeah. Like there again, it's just opening up that conversation of, yes, there is no way, you'd said it, but to re-emphasize, there is no right way to do this.
Totally.
You could spend 5 minutes, you could spend 5 hours just sitting and being still and being led of like, okay, and allowing your mind to go through like different situations or scenarios, and then looking at it and feeling it in a different way of like, why do I show up that way?
Yeah, totally.
Why am I not getting the results that I want?
Yeah, and I have, and we can include in the link below, tons of different questions that once I'm in that space, right? Because Tony Robbins says this, the quality of our questions determines the quality of our answers. And a lot of times we're asking questions like, we don't want that answer. People, what happens if I fail? Well, you might not want that answer, right? What happens if I'm not enough? Like, we ask these questions that then we go on this bunny trail, as opposed to like, okay, like, what's most important to me? What would make me proud? Mm-hmm. Right? Like, what did God put in me to do? Like, we need to be asking questions. And so I have a series of different questions that once you get to this quiet space, ask yourself, and then just sit and be still. Don't Google the answer. You have the answer. It's just, will you be still enough, right? Or maybe you pick a chapter in the Bible and you just read 3 verses, not 300. Sometimes we just read, as opposed to like, no, pick a verse and just meditate on that verse. Yeah. Consider the question, meditate on the verse, and just create stillness.
Right? And that's what I'm getting at. That was perfect. So there'll be a download that you can get, because there again, could be totally new for some people, or going back to this practice, but it's like, okay, like, how do I just allow myself to do that and then come up with new thoughts based off of different questions?
Totally. And can I give a plug? Because this is also why I'm creating the journal that I'm creating, is because at the bottom of every page of my journal is a quote that will blow your mind and get after your heart. And there's blank pages, and there's just a quote at the end of each. And some are Bible verses, some are quotes from my book, but they're just a thought that's going to make you go, you don't say, and open you wide up. That's why I'm building this journal, is because number one, journaling has changed my life, right? I've finally been able to hear me, the ins and outs, the ups and downs, the pretty, the ugly, all of it, right? And so the journal, and I'll put a link below that you can sign up for that, because it'll launch here in the next month. That's what that does, is it's a whole blank space with a thought that gets you open before yourself. Quiet, to just ponder, to just think.
Yep.
So join us for 30 days of mindfulness. Reset a pattern.
Reset, rethink,
master the silence, master your mind, get after your hearts, right? Like the how-tos, icing on the cake. But you're the cake. We are the cake. I'm the cake, you're the cake, we're the cake. Work on the cake, then do the icing. And next time, on the Dream On podcast, join us as we continue to chase and follow every dream that God's put on the inside of us.
On behalf of both of us, thank you for listening to another episode of Dream On. Don't forget to visit our website, The Dream Factory & Co., for all the show notes and other tools and resources to get you unstuck, clear, and helping you reprogram your thoughts and beliefs so that you can live out your dreams with a community that supports and challenges you. Until next time, dream on.